I'm going to shift my eyes over here because I'm going to go on a Zoom to talk to some families and players about self-talk. We're going to answer some 3 questions, so stay with it here. All right, before we start today's episode, I want to try something. For the next 5 seconds, don't think about self-talk. Don't think about the voice in your head during a game. Let's not even think about what you say to yourself after a mistake. Actually, let's try something a little easier. Don't think about the red elephant. You thought about it, didn't you? Exactly. And that's what we're going to dig into today, because the brain doesn't work the way we think it does. It is crazy, and we got to practice these things. Psychologists call ironic rebound. And there's research behind it from Harvard psychologist Daniel Wegner. His work showed that when you try not to think about something, the red elephant, the brain actually brings that forward. And as athletes, we do this constantly. Let's think about this as different sports. Don't strike out. Don't double fault in tennis. Don't miss the shot in basketball. Don't make the error in baseball. The brain still pictures the mistake, which is why the self-talk becomes one of the most powerful things in sport. And as I start to teach this more and more, I believe it because I'm incorporating it into my own life, but I've also experienced it. Well, I've experienced it from an athlete standpoint of what not to do. And if you flip that to what to do, we're going to get into that a little bit. So I'm going to answer 3 self-talk questions that athletes ask me all the time and that I want to teach them all the time. Number 1, why should athletes stop saying don't? 2, what should you actually say to yourself during a game? And number 3, what should you say to yourself after failure? Because the voice in our head is the only coach we need on every play. The awareness is key. Your hitting coach isn't going to be in the batter's box. The tennis coach isn't out there when you're about to serve on the service line. But your self-talk is always there, whether you are conscious of it or you're not. And if you don't learn how to manage that voice, then it's going to overtake you. It will manage you. So let's start with the first question. Why should athletes stop saying don't? The brain doesn't understand the negation of it. The brain processes the image before it processes the negation. So when you say don't strike out, your brain still has to picture the strikeout first. Just like earlier when I said don't think about the red elephant, the brain performs the actions better than it prevents the mistakes. I'm going to say that again. The brain performs actions better than it prevents mistakes. Red elephant. And we see this all the time in sport, and that's why we're here, that's why we do this. Let me give you an example. Let's see. A golfer, he stands over the shot with the water on the right side and thinks, don't hit it in the water. Gosh, that is me all the time. I'm trying to get away from it into self-talk. And guess where that ball goes? Right into the water. Because the brain just rehearsed the mistake. And this is why the elite athletes try to give their brain something to do, not something to avoid. Golf example, Tiger Woods. Tiger Woods has talked about this with his putting. When he stands over the putt, instead of saying don't miss left or don't leave it short, his cue becomes something like start the ball on the line. That gives his brain clear action to execute, start it on the line. And if he lined it up correctly, then it should go in the hole. Another example, Simone Biles, the Olympian gymnastic. She's talked about the importance of focusing on the movement itself, not the fear. And we just saw this with the Winter Olympics a lot, those snowboarders on the slope. But Biles said, if the thought becomes don't fail or don't fall, then everything tightens up, negativity. Instead, the focus becomes on what they need to do to execute, finish the rotation, spot the landing. Her brain isn't focused solely on, her brain is focused on the process of executing the movement, not avoiding the mistake. And there was research about this, because you got to think like, okay, success leaves clues. people are doing this in the Olympics, so there's got to be something backed by it. Of course there are. There was a study, and I have this written down here. I'm going to pull it up. There was a study by a major sports psychologist I'm going to butcher the name, I'm not even going to say it, and his colleagues in 2011, they looked at a few dozen athletes on self-talk. And their conclusion was that structured self-talk improves performance. Simple. Especially in skilled sports where there's mechanics involved and adjustability. So this isn't just motivational advice. This is science-based advice. So focus on those small improvements throughout the game, throughout the event. Question number 2. What should athletes actually say to themselves during a game? Well, I just gave you a couple little examples, but the best athletes in the world use cue language. Short instructions, not long sentences, short little paragraphs, commands, if you will, simple commands, acronyms, and a hitter might say like, see it early, stay through it. Pitcher could say something like, attack the zone or stay downhill. If you think basketball, right, follow through. Golfer might say smooth tempo. In action, clear instruction for the movement. When your self-talk gets really like complicated and mechanical, if you will, then we get tight, we're thinking about the wrong things. And so a simple cue really helps. Let me give you a couple examples. Steph Curry. Steph Curry has talked about this at the free throw line, one of the greatest free throw shooters and overall shooters of all time. Instead of thinking, don't miss this, his focus, his cue, soft touch. The cue organizes the movement and frees up the shot. And a lot of the self-talk with the cues allows us to be free and loose. And if you ask any athlete, would you rather be free and loose or would you rather be tight and stressed? Free and loose is the answer. That creates flow for us. That creates just subconsciously us going out there and participating but reacting freely, right? So you want to create the environment for your mind to be free and loose. Okay, I have athletes that say, hey, walking up to the plate, free and loose. And that's it, simple, okay? Because they know that that's their best self. Another example, tennis-wise here, Rafael Nadal, between points. He's always doing some form of cues, whether it's not a mechanical, a physical cue where he's adjusting his racket, or he hits his shoes, or verbally he says cues like move your feet, stay aggressive, right? Because when you're active and you're moving your feet, you're staying aggressive, well, you're playing aggressive. You're not playing on defense. You're not thinking about the last one. You're telling yourself what you want to do next. Question number 3. And by the way, if you like these, I'm doing these weekly, and this is a little bit different format because I'm on the Zoom here, but typically I have a guest with me on the porch, or I go meet up a guest, or I'll break down something else. So if there's something that you like, put it in the comments, send me a message, and I'm continuing to line up guests. I feel like that's feedback from your guys' side that you do like when I have an athlete or a former athlete. We talk about the journey. So back to it. Question number 3. What should athletes say to themselves after failure? So like somebody just strikes out, right? And it's not about like being so positive and rah, because there's different avenues to go down. But this is where when you fail and your response, we talked about that a lot, how you respond is where the self-talk matters the most. Because the failure is happening, no doubt about it. You're going to strike out, you're going to miss shots, you're going to make the errors, you're going to double fault. What separates the great athletes isn't that they avoid failure. They're actually more aware that they will fail, and it's part of it. But it's the fact that they reset quickly, like after that point, after that pitch. And there's a great book, and I've referenced it before, The Inner Game of Tennis by Timothy Gallwey. And Gallwey explains that athletes have 2 voices. One voice criticizes, the other voice performs. When the critical voice takes over, the athletes tighten up. Elite athletes redirect their focus forward. Okay, let me give you an example. Tie this in Tom Brady. One of my favorites. Tom Brady is famous for this. If he throws an interception, you might see a moment of frustration, but then he learns how to reset. Breath work, self-talk. refocusing the energy on what he needs to do next, because you're only as good as your next pitch. You're only as good as your next play. Kobe Bryant, R.I.P., another great GOAT, talked about this a lot. After a bad shot or a mistake, he would tell himself, next play. Not emotional reacting, just moving forward. On to the next one. You're only as good as your next one. And if you think about in sales, no, and O means next opportunity. And we would always talk about, when I coach is, hey, you're only as good as the next pitch. And it gives you that forward framework to start thinking about the next one, so you can be present for that next one. I just went down a rabbit hole of sports psychologist Jim Loehr, and Loehr, and he one of very successful mental performance coaches, Pete Sampras. I think he's worked with some Tony Robbins, and he talks about a private voice versus a public voice. And this is very similar to the inner game of tennis, but he really talks about the difference between that public voice and the private voice. And your public voice is what you say it out loud. When you're walking around with your friend group, when you're in the locker room, what are you saying to your teammates? What do you say to your coach? But the private voice, that's what you say to yourself. And that voice is constant. We have 80,000 thoughts in our mind daily. So there's a lot of private voice talk going on. But Loehr's point is, the elite performers train their private voice, because if your private voice is constantly saying things like, I can't believe I did that, I always mess this up, or I don't play well here, or I'm terrible right now, then your brain is tightening up. But when the athletes train their private voice to say things like, next pitch, stay aggressive, or their simple cue, get on the line, I got this, move your feet, they stay in the present moment. It's an action replaced with it. And that present moment is the only place performance actually matters. Because when we go down a deep hole in a slump, whatever sport you're in, it's because we're making that slump in here a little bit more. That private voice is saying, oh no, don't mess up again, or I have to do this, or I have to give yourself direction with that talk. And so, to kind of wrap up here, is like, your swing usually isn't the first thing that breaks the slump. It's not mechanical, it's the self-talk. It's a self-talk walking to the batter's box. It's a self-talk walking to the penalty kick, to the free throw line. And that focus, that language, shapes your focus. And that focus of the language will eventually shape your results, because it gives you the cue. So if you want to improve your performance, start by improving the voice in your head. Because the athlete with the best self-talk usually wins the long game. They're in more control of themselves. They've practiced that private voice. They've practiced that public voice. So keep working on it. I hope this one helped you. If this helped you, send it to somebody who might need to hear it. And if I was still playing, if I'm a parent, this would help. It would give me some direction to work on it. And then you have to take actionable items. You have to sit down and say, okay, what cues help me when I'm in the box? What cues help me when I'm in my sport? And the next time you actually step on the field, pay attention to, are you saying those cues, or are you saying something different? Because you have to practice the self-talk. It's a skill. It's no different than bunting or sprinting. Everything has to be practiced, and details have to be included. And so the self-talk, that voice, it's either helping you compete or it's holding you back. And might be holding you back from that best season yet. So try something different, stay with it, reflect on it. Appreciate you guys. Subscribe, reach out with any questions. If you want a little bit more insight here, happy to help you out. But we'll talk soon. Let's go get them.